The book of Exodus, chapter 17, verses 1 through 13. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cries out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Oreb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword.
Let's begin at the end, just for a minute. The last few verses of today's text are there because they made me smile. In our current context, I wonder this is how it feels to be a pastor amidst the pandemic and the economy crash and the police murders and the protests and the hunger and the homeschooling of the children and this election season. If anyone would have told pastors what was coming to pass in 2020, they would have laughed, then cried, and then run. Here's the bit about leaders. Joshua and the Israelite soldiers are at battle with the Amalekites, and as long as their leader Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady until sunset. The end. Moses is held responsible for protecting the people from anything that might harm them. He cannot take a break. Really? Is this our model for ministry? Long-suffering pastors have an even more impossible role this year. But let's make it okay to be human. Lowering one's arms now and then is critical to their survival and to ours. Let's show them some love. All of us, too, are in the wilderness alongside the people of Israel. Our national leaders have taken us, or at least let us wander to, a place without water. It's getting really thirsty up here, and there's no sign of water in sight. Our nation is in the valley of dry bones, to use another metaphor. In the valley of dry bones, wondering how we can ever come to life again. Every week, the news is worse than the week before. Exodus 17 tells us the water's coming. The joy is coming. But where is it? Maybe this is a good time for us to ask whether God is among us or not. Does it feel to you like your God, the divine, the host of the angel armies, is among us or not? Where is God in this mess? How could any of this be God's desire for the world? What should we thirsty ones do? What have you done before when in a wilderness without water? Where do you turn? And have you ever seen a mirage that promised a way out but turned out to be only an illusion? The people of Israel who have escaped their captivity in Egypt seem to be going through a training and testing time. They are learning to trust God along the way, to trust that yesterday they had bread and tomorrow they will have bread too. Are we in a training and testing time? Where's the water, for heaven's sakes, the life-giving water? Just a short time ago, the Israelites were in Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped right alongside the water. I wonder whether they ever noticed if they felt gratitude for their abundance of water. Did they call it a sign of God's presence among them, within them? I wonder whether they considered Moses to be a great leader in those times of great water. Now they are filled with fear and doubt, and they say they are perishing from lack of water. What have you done for us lately, Moses? Where are you, God? Then the water comes out of nowhere, almost, water from a rock. They were dazzled. One hopes they never forgot it. We still tell the story today. Something happened there. Water from a rock. When we, in our own time, are filled with fear and doubt, what keeps us going? Sometimes what keeps us going is the memory of oasis times in our past, times when we were sure of the divine presence in our lives. Do you tell a water from the rock story from your life? From this community's life? Do you hold on to your oasis times when the going gets rough, when you are starving for rest and water? Do you look for and notice points of presence along the way? Do you recall those oasis times when the going gets rough? Do you recall what helped you in past times? What was a staff for you then? Perhaps we all need to get back to the basics, back to the bread and water that truly sustain us, if we can only remember where it is. I recall a story from a little book, Sleeping with Bread, Holding What Gives You Life. It's a story about holding on to something life-giving when you're scared, something that reminds you that you are loved and cared for by a power greater than your own, something that reminds you of your preciousness. During the bombing raids of World War II, thousands of children were orphaned and left to starve. The fortunate ones were rescued and placed in refugee camps where they received food and care. Many of these children, however, had lost so much they could not sleep at night. They feared waking up to find themselves once again abandoned, without food. Nothing seemed to reassure them. Finally, someone said, "Let's give each child a slice of bread to hold at bedtime. Bread is so important to them." Holding their bread then, each child with a piece of bread, holding their bread, the children could finally sleep at peace. All through the night, the bread reminded them, "Today I ate, and I will eat again tomorrow." The bread was a visible, tangible, edible reminder that God was in their midst. The bread reminded them and reminds us that God is our strength. Hold on to the bread. God will strengthen us to the end. God is faithful. So, what is bread for you? We need to know that every day, every week, every year, knowing what is bread for me, what is life-giving, is an essential navigation tool. Maybe you use the daily examine, a powerful way to keep in touch with the bread, where it is and where it isn't. You can do the examine with just you and God in the room. It can feel really good to do with someone close to you or someone you would like to be close to you. This is also a practice that can be begun with children and grandchildren. Each day, perhaps at the end of day or with your evening meal, take a few minutes to reflect. Light a candle if you like, or sit under the stars. Get settled. Then ask, for what am I most grateful today? For what am I least grateful today? This is the living manna, the living water of your own life. This will teach you where the bread is and where it isn't. There are many ways to ask this, and over time, meaningful patterns appear. Sometimes I ask, what made me come alive today? Follow that thread. I invite you to pause the video here if you like to reflect on this day or yesterday or this past week. What has been bread for you? How is God, the divine, holy love, speaking through these moments of your life? God's great desire for your life is that you have abundant love and life to give and receive. God desires for you to sleep with bread, to know such abundant bread and bountiful water that you begin to take in how deeply you are loved, just how precious you are, without doing or proving anything. Precious. And then you will share your bread and your love. As followers of Jesus, we are offered not just the food that will keep us going for a few hours, but the food and drink that will keep us going forever. We are promised all the food and drink we need. Abundance. I want to live into these promises again. I want to share this fullness when I am feeling it. None of us has to hold up our arms all by ourselves 24/7. We can hold hands, well, almost touching, and know God's abundant life together. Amen.